My question is about vaccines, because I'm a pretty pro-vaccine myself, but I'm also extremely libertarian. So I was kind of wondering about your views on mandatory vaccines on a government level, like
Right.
a national level.
So
What are your views on that?
Sure. My general view is that if you are talking about vaccines for communicable diseases that are not behaviorally related, then mandating those, at least in terms of you're not allowed to come to school unless you take the vaccine, makes perfect sense. If you're talking about measles, for example, where herd immunity is the purpose. See, people mistake what exactly vaccines are for. So there are a lot of people who believe that vaccines are just to immunize you from the particular disease. Well, they actually have two purposes, right? Purpose number one is to immunize you from the disease. Purpose number two is to make sure that you're not a carrier of the disease. And that makes a difference, particularly for pregnant women who can't have vaccinations. It makes a difference for kids who have leukemia, for example, who also cannot have vaccinations. People with weak immune systems basically cannot have vaccinations in many cases. And so the idea of creating a herd immunity so that the chances of one of those people coming into contact with a person who is a carrier is minimized, that makes a lot of sense. Now, the reason I say not behaviorally related is because if it's behaviorally related, then you have the government that's effectively trying to restrict behavior or is trying to mandate that you get a vaccine for a behavior you might never engage in. That I have objections to. If you're talking about a measles, mumps, rubella vaccine, MMR, then the idea that you ought to be barred from a public school unless you get the vaccine, again, that makes sense to me. Herd immunity is about externalities. No libertarian that I know of, unless you're a full-on anarchist, believes that externalities should be minimized, meaning that we shouldn't pretend that externalities don't exist. It is an external, just like no libertarian believes that I should be allowed to pollute a river. That I should just be able to there should be no regulations. I should be able to pour my sludge into the river, and you're living next door, now you're drinking sludgy water. In the same way, if I'm a carrier for a disease and you get the disease, this is now an externality that you are paying for because I didn't get the vaccine, and that is a responsibility that lies in more collective and regulated fashion, Cash.
Awesome. Thank you, Ben.
Really appreciate the call. Jordan in Utah, you're on the Ben Shapiro Show. Go for it, Jordan.
I just wanted to ask,